Welcome to Hacking Your Leadership. I'm Chris.
And I'm Lorenzo.
And welcome to this week's Thoughtful Thursday. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Hacking Your Leadership and leave us a review on iTunes. On this week's Thoughtful Thursday, I want to talk about influence as a leader. I'm bringing this up because you were a guest on a podcast on Enrique Acosta's show, the Developing the Leader Within show. And I know you talked about this, and then on Monday, a few days ago, we talked about 5 levels of leadership and why people would listen to a leader. And you know, at the end of the day, a lot of that is influence. And so I think this is an important discussion because without influence, there's no such thing as leadership. You can't really do anything unless you can influence your people. But a lot of people think of that as a negative, like influencing, almost like a manipulation. And it's not that. You know, what do you think about this?
Yeah, no, it's funny because that was the question that Enrique had asked me that we talked a lot about was the difference between influence and manipulation. Leadership, that's all it is influence. And sometimes you have leaders, and this is why you have bad leaders, is that they influence things getting done by things like fear or aggression or whatever the case is, but that's still a level of influence. But people hear that word and they immediately assign it to like, I don't want to be influenced. I want to do what I want to do, right? Versus understanding that really good leaders that establish influence, you know, if it's based on things like your values and trust and integrity and relationships and the way in which you not only treat people, but help to develop people and inspire people, that over time is what gives you great influence to help them. And the way that I look at that responsibility is like, are you influencing people to meet and exceed their own expectations of themselves?
Right.
Or are you influencing people to get something that you want for yourself? And I think that's where Enrique and I had some dialogue and conversation, because that's a big difference in kind of like how things happen over long term and how people feel about the work that they're doing. And so, yeah, it's a major component, if not the largest only component of real leadership, in my opinion.
Yeah. I hope this person isn't listening right now, but I want to tell you about this time. I just completely manipulated this employee into doing exactly what I wanted. When I met them, I was just really nice to them, and they expressed to me the goals that they had, and we talked about that. And I talked to some other people to kind of get them interviews with places in order to move up in their career, planting seeds to kind of get them to where they wanted to go. And what did they do? Exactly what I wanted them to do. They performed well, and they were highly engaged, and they got their job done well. So I completely manipulated them into doing exactly what I wanted them to do by helping them achieve the goals they wanted to achieve. It's like, what's the difference, right? It's all semantics. At the end of the day, you can assign a positive or a negative value to whatever word you want. Leadership is influence. And if you want to say that manipulation is the non-altruistic form of that, you know, I'm only getting somebody to do what I want them to do because it benefits me. Okay, you could say that all you want to, but I know plenty of times that I have manipulated my kids into doing something that was A, good for me, B, good for them, and C, they were happy they did it when they were done. Now, is that manipulation or is that influence? At the end of the day, if people's careers are positively impacted by the actions, I don't inherently see that as a bad thing. I only see it as a good thing.
I like how you did that. I like how you did the story of I manipulated them into achieving the goals they wanted to achieve in life.
Oh, yes.
Because it's a great call. It's I think being clear with people and understanding people. And again, I think when we talk about defining leadership for people, it's important that you tell people how you measure success. And being really clear about that, and then being true to what you say. Like I said, I think early in my career and most leaders' careers, and to this day even, you know, a lot of times you want to measure your success by the people that get promoted underneath you and say, like, I've gotten so many promotions and so many promotions. And what you're saying basically is that I'm capable of developing people into the next job, right? I think at the truest form of that is saying, like, what I enjoy is being able to help people, again, achieve or exceed their own expectations. And when they're doing those things, they tend to have more opportunities present themselves to them, and then they move on to the next job. But when you work in an organization, that's a very important thing. It's very important that you're capable of developing your replacement, or that you're building teams to take on more ownership and responsibility. And people can see that from the outside and think like, oh, well, that sounds like it's about ego or about, how you feel about yourself. But like, that's actually the job and the responsibility of the leader. And so to your point, like the semantics piece and how we look at things tend to be skewed based on how we feel in a certain situation, or whether or not we got what we wanted to get out of a situation. And when we did get it, it felt like great influence. And we didn't get it, it felt like we were being manipulated, like,
Right,
so it's just,
exactly.
those are the things that I see in here.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question about that, because that brings up an interesting point. So, have you been in a situation where you were doing things because it was the best thing for both you and the employee and the organization, and if things were done well by that employee, it would have worked out really well for them, but they couldn't get out of their own way and thinking they were being manipulated, so they didn't do the thing. Almost like I'm going to cut my nose off to spite my face here, because I don't feel like I feel like I'm being manipulated, so I'm not going to do it, even though it was good. It should have been good for me to do it to begin with. So I want to ask you about that situation. But first, I want to give it up to word from one of our sponsors. All right, Lorenzo. So tell me about a time when an employee just had a hard time of getting out of their own way, and how did you finally get through to them in kind of making sure that they understood that whatever it was that you were being asked to do, that they weren't actually being manipulated. This was the right thing to do.
It happens because sometimes, myself included, we get caught up in our own emotions, or we get caught up in how we are perceiving things versus actually like listening and understanding. And that can be a sticking point for a lot of people in different situations. And I've had that where it's like you're having a conversation with somebody. I'm thinking about something, a few years back, but like talking specifically about like, hey, this is the work. And you're asking for this, and to get what you're asking for, this is the work that you're going to need to do. And yeah, this is absolutely work that we are being responsible for on our team, that we're being asked to deliver upon. So by you doing this, it absolutely is helping the priority that we have. And where they were getting stuck was thinking about everybody else. Well, like, but why am I having to take this assignment when other people are not pulling their weight, and they should have this assignment as well. And like, it shouldn't just be me. If this is what our team is being measured on, then it shouldn't just be me that is being asked to kind of own this. And where we were getting stuck was like, well, I'm not asking you to be the only person to own this, right? I'm asking everybody's going to be responsible for this. But in your building of your leadership skill, your ability to have conversations and dialogue, your ability to challenge peers, and your ability to influence the change that needs to happen, and bring people along and meet them where they're at. Like, that's actually what we're talking about here. Is your ability to build better relationships with people, to challenge maybe what has made you stuck before in getting this work done, and build that skill, which is going to be tough. It's going to be hard work to do, but you're not taking on you're not owning just the responsibility of this one thing by yourself. Everybody owns it. You're owning the ability to move it forward, and that's where we were kind of getting stuck a little bit. And it took some analogies, it took some conversation, it took some. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to think about it, and what I want you to do is walk away. I want you to think about, like, what are you getting out of this work? How is this helping to shape the career that you want and the opportunities that you want? Let's talk about that. Like, we can tuck away. This is good for the team. This is good for our results. This is good for what we're trying to achieve. We both are on the same page. That's a check mark 100%. What I want you to think about is this assignment going to help you with the things that you need to work on to get the next thing? And if you come back with the answer, say like, it's not going to help me with that, then we'll move on to something else, and I'll give somebody else the opportunity and the responsibility to grow in this space. But you make that decision and you decide. And that became the unlock. It gave them a chance to kind of step aside, remove some emotion, think about it, and then come back and say, you know what, I do want this responsibility, and I do want this. And now, could you look at that and say, like, well, maybe I was manipulating them by saying, if you don't want to do it, I'll give it to somebody else? Maybe, but that's true. That's what would have happened,
Right.
had they come back and said, it's not for me. I don't see the development opportunity here. Okay, cool. Then like, I will give that to somebody else, and we will work on something different.
Right.
But that was what was going to happen. But for them, taking the time to step aside and think about their own development and what they were working on allowed us to have a different conversation, which was really the one around peer relationships. and allowing people to have the responsibility of executing a strategy, but also doing it the way that they want to do it and not your way, which can sometimes feel like the only way that can be done, which was really the underlying element that we were working on developmentally.
Yeah, I think it's a fantastic story and a great example of that. I'm picturing Mr. Miyagi and Daniel LaRusso in the 1984 Karate Kid movie, all the things that he was being asked to do, the wax on, wax off, paint the fence, like all these things that he looked at as like why am I basically fixing your house for you? You said you were going to teach me how to do this. And it's the connecting of the dots that happened after the fact that what he was really learning was blocks and punches and karate. He was learning the karate moves without knowing he was learning them, just from a muscle memory standpoint. And had he been explained at the very beginning, this is what you're doing, it wouldn't have made for as good a movie story, obviously, but that's the difference between a person feeling manipulated. Like at some point during the movie, he felt like he was being used, right? He felt like you're just using me to fix your house for you. What are you actually doing? And it finally came to the head where they're yelling at each other. And all of a sudden he's like reaches out to punch him and he blocks him. And he puts into play all the things he'd been doing over the previous few months, and not knowing that's what he was learning to do. And there was this light bulb moment where it connected the dots of like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been doing over the last few months, is actually learning these things. That, again, great Hollywood story. But if you're a leader of people, that's the difference between your people feeling manipulated and feeling like they are doing something on their own, and they're invited to the conversation on their own leadership development. And are you transparent with them around why you're asking them to do certain things? Some people don't want that or need that. They need to have that kind of like, just do this over and over and over again. And I know you're learning something in the background, even though you might not know. Other people have an inherent kind of a cynicism or a distrust with a situation like that, and they need to have everything laid out. If you are a leader who has one style and does the same thing for everybody, you're not going to get to all your people. You need to make sure that you're meeting them where they are. And for some of your people, again, that might be to not necessarily give them all of the cards that you're holding in your hand, because you know that it's best for them. They'll get the best work done if you reveal your cards later on at some point down the line. For other people, you need to show them exactly what you hold. You need to show them exactly the cards that you have, because that inherent distrust they have might make them shut down completely if they think that they're being manipulated, as opposed to knowing that, hey, you know what? This is a transparent conversation between us, and I want you to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And with that, it brings us to the end of this episode. I would please ask all of you, check out the Developing the Leader Within podcast. We will put the link in the show notes. Enrique has an amazing show with great guests and great dialogue, and I think it's something that you should consider as a part of your podcasting listening library. So with that, it brings us to the end of the episode. I'm Lorenzo.
I'm Chris.
And have a great day.